September 15th, 2008, 1:45 a.m. Lehman Brothers headquarters, New York City. $618 billion. Gone. And the people who caused it would be paid to survive it. The fourth largest investment bank in America, 158 years old. Survivor of the Civil War, 2 world wars. The Great Depression filed for bankruptcy in the middle of the night. By morning, the global financial system was in free fall. Stock markets crashed. Banks froze. Credit cards stopped working. Companies couldn't make payroll. Retirement accounts evaporated. That morning, millions of Americans opened statements they didn't understand and saw their future shrink. And nobody, not the government, not the banks, not the experts who saw it coming, did anything to stop it. Within 2 weeks, the United States government would spend $700 billion to save the banks that caused the crisis. Homeowners who lost everything got nothing. 18 years later, we're still living with the consequences. This is the story of how Wall Street broke America, how the government chose banks over people, and why it's going to happen again. The night before, 6 p.m., the New York Federal Reserve. Every major bank CEO in America sits in one room. Timothy Geithner, president of the New York Fed, stands at the front. The message is simple. Lehman Brothers is dying. Somebody needs to buy them. Tonight, Bank of America says no. Barclays says no. Nobody wants to touch Lehman's toxic assets, mortgage-backed securities. Nobody can value because nobody knows what they're actually worth. By midnight, it's over. Lehman will file for bankruptcy in 3 hours. Hank Paulson, Secretary of the Treasury, makes the decision. Let them fail. The market needs to learn a lesson. 48 hours later, Paulson will beg Congress for $700 billion because the entire financial system is collapsing. The lesson the market learned? The government will always save you, as long as you're big enough. After this moment, risk no longer belonged to those who took it. 9:30 a.m., the opening bell. The Dow Jones drops 504 points in the first hour, then another 200, then another 300. By closing bell, down 777 points. The largest single-day point drop in history. But the Dow doesn't tell the real story. Credit markets, the invisible system that makes the entire economy function, freeze completely. Companies can't borrow money to make payroll. Cities can't fund basic services. Car loans, student loans, business loans, all stopped. The machinery of capitalism seizes up like an engine without oil. And here's what nobody tells you. It almost didn't restart. The next day, Reserve Primary Fund, one of the oldest, safest money market funds in America, breaks the buck. Money market funds are supposed to be completely safe. You put in $1, you get $1 back. That's the deal. Reserve Primary held $785 million in Lehman Brothers debt. When Lehman collapsed, that debt became worthless. Suddenly, your dollar is worth 97 cents. Doesn't sound like much. Until you realize, if money market funds aren't safe, nothing is safe. Within 24 hours, investors pull $300 billion out of money market funds. The run is so fast, so catastrophic, that the government has to guarantee all money market funds to prevent total collapse. This is the moment the world almost ended, not the stock market crash. The moment people stopped trusting that their money existed. 24 hours later, General Electric, one of the most stable companies in America, can't borrow money. GE doesn't make risky bets. They make jet engines, light bulbs, medical equipment. They've been profitable for 128 years. It doesn't matter. The credit markets are frozen. Nobody will lend to anybody. Warren Buffett calls it an economic Pearl Harbor. Ben Bernanke, chairman of the Federal Reserve, tells Congress, if we don't act immediately, we may not have an economy by Monday. It's Wednesday, 3 days into the crisis. 3 p.m., the Oval Office. President George W. Bush sits with Hank Paulson, Ben Bernanke, and congressional leaders. Bernanke explains, the global financial system has maybe 72 hours before complete collapse. No credit means no economy. No economy means no food distribution, no medicine, no fuel, no civilization. They need money. A lot of it. Fast. Paulson asks for $700 billion. No conditions. No oversight. Just a blank check to buy toxic assets from banks. $700 billion. That's $2,300 for every person in America. Congress will pass it in 2 weeks. Homeowners facing foreclosure? They'll get nothing. Here's the number that explains everything. 13 million. 13 million Americans lost their homes between 2007 and 2016. Not because they were irresponsible. Not because they bought houses they couldn't afford. Because the banks that sold them mortgages lied about what those mortgages were. And when the lies caught up, the government saved the banks. The homeowners were left to drown. 2 weeks after Lehman collapsed. 1:30 p.m. The House of Representatives. The bailout bill fails. 228 against, 205 for. The stock market dropped 777 points in one afternoon. Retirement accounts lose $1.2 trillion in value in 6 hours. 4 days later, Congress votes again. This time it passes. The bill is 451 pages long. Most members of Congress haven't read it. They don't need to. The message is clear. The banks get saved. You don't. After this vote, the rules were never the same again. Risk no longer belonged to those who took it. But here's the part they didn't tell you in 2008. The crisis didn't start in September. It didn't start in 2007. It didn't even start in 2000. It started in 1999 with a law most Americans have never heard of, and the warning signs were visible for 9 years. People screamed about it. Regulators saw it coming. Bankers knew exactly what they were doing. Nobody stopped it, because stopping it would have cost Wall Street too much money. This isn't a story about a financial crisis. This is a story about a decision. A decision made in 1999 that guaranteed 2008 would happen. A decision that made the next collapse inevitable. November 12, 1999. A pen touched paper. 9 years later, the global economy collapsed. President Bill Clinton signed the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act into law. Most Americans have never heard of it. Wall Street spent $300 million in lobbying to pass it. With one signature, Clinton repealed the law that had prevented another Great Depression for 66 years. This wasn't an accident. This was permission. The law Clinton killed was called Glass-Steagall. Passed in 1933, 4 years into the Great Depression. The idea was simple. Separate the banks. Commercial banks hold your money, your checking account, your savings. FDIC insured. Boring, safe. Investment banks gamble. Stocks, bonds, risky bets. Not insured. You can lose everything. Glass-Steagall said, you can't be both. If you hold people's savings, you don't get to gamble with them. For 66 years, it worked. But by the 1990s, Wall Street wanted more. Commercial banks were making steady money. Investment banks were making obscene money. Citicorp looked at Travelers Group, a massive investment bank and insurance conglomerate, and wanted to merge. One problem. Glass-Steagall made it illegal, so they did it anyway. April 1998. Citicorp and Travelers Group announce a $70 billion merger. The largest corporate merger in history at the time. The deal creates Citigroup a financial supermarket offering everything. Checking accounts, credit cards, mortgage, stock trading, insurance, hedge funds. All of it illegal under Glass-Steagall. Sandy Weil, CEO of Travelers, and John Reed, CEO of Citicorp, make the announcement with smiles. Reporters ask, isn't this against the law? Weil's answer, the law will change. He was right. The lobbying begins immediately. Citigroup has 1 year to unwind the merger or get the law changed. They spend $100 million making sure the law changes. This wasn't influence. It was a purchase. Alan Greenspan, chairman of the Federal Reserve, tells Congress that Glass-Steagall is outdated. Banks need to compete globally. Robert Rubin, Clinton's Treasury Secretary, agrees. Regulation stifles innovation. The banks pour money into Congress. Campaign contributions. Promises of jobs after Congress. Lobbying dinners. Private jets. Phil Gramm, Republican senator from Texas and chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, writes the bill to kill Glass-Steagall. After leaving the Senate, Gramm will become a vice chairman at UBS, a Swiss investment bank. But one regulator sees what's coming. Brooksley Born, chair of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Her job is to regulate derivatives complex financial bets between banks. Bets on whether mortgages will pay out. Bets on whether companies will default. Bets on bets. In 1998, the derivatives market is worth $27 trillion. Nobody regulates it. Nobody even knows what's in it. Born proposes a simple rule. Banks should have to disclose what derivatives they're holding. Not ban them, not restrict them, just make them visible. The response is immediate and brutal. Alan Greenspan tells her to back off. Larry Summers, Deputy Treasury Secretary, calls her proposal dangerous. Robert Rubin says it will cause a financial crisis. Born pushes anyway. Greenspan, Rubin, and SEC Chairman Arthur Levitt go to Congress and demand Born be stripped of authority. Congress passes a law forbidding Born from regulating derivatives. She resigns. 10 years later, unregulated derivatives will nearly destroy the global economy. November 4, 1999. The Senate votes on the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. 90-8. Democrats and Republicans both vote to kill Glass-Steagall. Clinton signs it 8 days later. At the signing ceremony, Clinton says the law will enhance the stability of our financial system. Larry Summers, now Treasury Secretary, says it will make markets safer. Phil Gramm says regulation is the enemy of prosperity. Sandy Weil, whose illegal merger forced the law to change, throws a party. Here's what the law did. It allowed commercial banks, the ones holding your savings, to merge with investment banks and insurance companies. Now the same institution taking your mortgage payment can bundle that mortgage with thousands of others, sell it as a security, bet against it with derivatives, and insure the bet with an insurance company they also own. If the bets win, the bank keeps the profit. If the bets lose, your savings account covers the loss. You take the risk. They take the reward. This is the machine that built 2008. Within 3 years, every major bank merges into a financial supermarket. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citigroup. They're no longer just banks. They're everything. They hold deposits, underwrite mortgages, trade stocks, sell insurance, run hedge funds, manage pensions. And because they hold your deposits insured by the government, they know they can't be allowed to fail. Too big to fail isn't a warning. It's a strategy. By 2000, banks start doing something new. They issue mortgages to people who can't afford them, subprime borrowers. No income verification, no down payment. Adjustable rates that will spike in 2 years. It doesn't matter if the borrower can pay. The bank isn't keeping the mortgage. They bundle it with thousands of others. Turn it into a mortgage-backed security. Sell it to investors. The investors think they're buying safe assets because rating agencies paid by the banks stamp them a AA. The banks make money on every step. Issuing the mortgage, bundling it, selling it, insuring it, betting against it. The borrower is irrelevant. The mortgage is just raw material. By 2006, half of all mortgages issued in America are subprime. By this point, the system wasn't designed to work. It was designed to break profitably. The math is simple. If housing prices keep rising, everyone wins. If housing prices fall, the entire system collapses. People see it coming. In 2004, the FBI warns Congress that mortgage fraud is epidemic and will cause an economic crisis. In 2005, economists publish papers showing the housing bubble will burst. In 2006, hedge fund manager John Paulson starts betting billions that mortgages will fail. He's not guessing. He's reading the data. And the banks? They know exactly what they're selling. Internal emails from 2006 show bankers calling their own mortgage products toxic and crap. They sell them anyway. Because the law changed in 1999, and the new rule is simple: make as much money as you can. The government will clean up the mess. By 2007, the machine is running on fumes. Housing prices stop rising. Subprime borrowers start defaulting. Mortgage-backed securities lose value. But the banks have insured those securities with credit default swaps, derivatives that pay out if mortgages fail. Problem: the insurance is fake. AIG, the largest insurance company in America, has sold $500 billion in credit default swaps. If mortgages fail, AIG owes $500 billion. AIG has $5 billion in reserve. The math doesn't work. It was never supposed to, because AIG assumed housing prices would never fall. When they do, the entire system implodes. This is the permission structure. In 1999, Congress told Wall Street, the rules don't apply anymore. In 1998, regulators told Brooksley Born, don't ask what's in the shadows. In 2000, banks heard, gamble with savings, we'll protect you. In 2006, the market screamed, this is going to collapse. In 2008, it did. Glass-Steagall was killed to let Citigroup exist. 9 years later, Citigroup needed $476 billion in government bailouts to survive. The largest bailout in American history. For a bank that was illegal to create. Too big to fail wasn't discovered in 2008. It was engineered in 1999. The rules changed once for the banks. They never changed back for you. After the crisis, Congress passed Dodd-Frank, a 2,300-page law meant to prevent another 2008. It didn't bring back Glass-Steagall. The big banks are bigger now than they were in 2008. January 2009. Bank of America reports a $2.4 billion loss for the fourth quarter. 3 weeks later, the company pays $3.6 billion in bonuses. They lost money. They got bonuses. Where did the bonus money come from? You, the taxpayer, the bailout. This is the story of who paid for the crisis and who got paid because of it. Here's the number: 13 million. 13 million Americans lost their homes to foreclosure between 2007 and 2016. That's 1 in every 9 homes with a mortgage. Gone. Not because the homeowners were reckless. Not because they bought mansions they couldn't afford. Because the banks lied to them. Adjustable rate mortgages that spiked from 4% to 11%. Balloon payments buried in paperwork. Prepayment penalties that trapped people in bad loans. When housing prices fell, the mortgages went underwater. You owe $300,000. The house is worth $180,000. You can't sell. You can't refinance. You're trapped. The bank forecloses, takes the house, sells it at auction for pennies. You lose everything: your home, your equity, your credit, your future. The bank writes it off as a loss and gets bailed out by the government. The bailout wasn't just $700 billion. That's the number Congress approved. The Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP. But the Federal Reserve did something else. Something quieter. Between 2008 and 2010, the Fed loaned banks $7.7 trillion at near-zero interest rates. Not a gift, a loan. But a loan you could never get. The banks borrowed at 0.01%, loaned it back to the government at 3%, made billions in profit, risk-free. Bloomberg News sued the Federal Reserve to get the numbers. The Fed fought for 2 years to keep them secret. When the numbers came out, Americans learned the truth. The real bailout was 10 times larger than they were told. Here's who got bailout money. Citigroup, $476 billion. Bank of America, $336 billion. Morgan Stanley, $107 billion. Goldman Sachs, $69 billion. Wells Fargo, $60 billion. These are the institutions that caused the crisis. They got rescued first, fastest, most. Here's who didn't get bailout money. Homeowners. Congress debated helping people avoid foreclosure. Loan modifications, principal reductions, refinancing programs. The banks lobbied against it, said it would create moral hazard. People need to face consequences for their decisions. The irony was lost on no one. October 2010. Foreclosures are happening so fast the system breaks. Banks are foreclosing on homes they don't legally own, signing documents they haven't read, forging signatures. It's called robo-signing. Bank employees signing 10,000 foreclosure documents a month, 400 a day, one signature every 90 seconds. They admit in court they don't read them, don't verify ownership, don't check if the homeowner actually owes the debt. One employee signs her name bogus on foreclosure documents for months. Nobody notices. Judges start throwing out foreclosures. Attorneys general investigate. The banks eventually settle, pay $25 billion in fines. Sounds like a lot, until you realize they made $100 billion foreclosing on those homes. The fine was the cost of doing business. While millions lost homes, millions more lost jobs. 8.7 million jobs disappeared between 2008 and 2010. The unemployment rate hit 10%. The real rate-counting people who gave up looking hit 17%. But those numbers don't capture what happened to the people. A 55-year-old factory worker laid off in 2009, spends 2 years looking for work, takes a job at half his old salary, never recovers. A recent college graduate enters the job market in the worst economy since the Depression, can't find work, moves back home, takes unpaid internships, falls behind on student loans. An engineer at Lehman Brothers, 20 years with the company, walks out with his belongings in a box. Pension reduced. 401k cut in half. Starts over at 50. These aren't outliers. This is 8 million people. The crisis destroyed $16 trillion in household wealth. Retirement accounts cut in half. Home equity evaporated. Savings wiped out. People in their 60s ready to retire suddenly can't. They work another decade to rebuild what was stolen. People in their 30s ready to buy homes can't. They're drowning in student debt because college was the only escape from unemployment. The crisis didn't just destroy wealth. It destroyed timelines. Retirement delayed. Home ownership delayed. Marriage delayed. Children delayed. An entire generation put on hold because Wall Street gambled with money that wasn't theirs. But Wall Street didn't delay anything. January 2009. Wall Street pays itself $18.4 billion in bonuses. In the same year, 9 million people lost their jobs. The financial industry paid bonuses equal to the entire GDP of Paraguay. The defense? We need to retain talent. The talent that destroyed the global economy. October 2011. A small protest starts in Zuccotti Park, New York City. Occupy Wall Street. The message is simple. We are the 99%. Within weeks, Occupy spreads to 600 cities. Tens of thousands of people sleeping in parks, protesting inequality, demanding accountability. The movement doesn't have clear demands, doesn't have leaders, doesn't have a path to power. It doesn't matter. The message lands. For the first time since the crisis, millions of Americans say out loud what they've been thinking. The system is rigged. By 2012, the picture is clear. The banks that caused the crisis got bigger. JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo. They now control 50% of all banking assets in America. Too big to fail became bigger to fail. The executives kept their jobs, kept their wealth, kept their bonuses. Lloyd Blankfein, CEO of Goldman Sachs during the crisis, still CEO in 2012, paid $67 million between 2008 and 2012. Jamie Dimon, CEO of JPM Morgan Chase, still CEO, paid $23 million in 2011 alone. Brian Moynihan, CEO of Bank of America, took over after the crisis, paid $7 million in 2012. 0 executives went to prison. 1 went to jail. 1 out of thousands. Kareem Sarajeldin, a mid-level executive at Credit Suisse, sentenced to 30 months for hiding losses. Not a CEO, not a decision-maker. A scapegoat. The Justice Department had the evidence. Internal emails calling mortgage products toxic waste. Testimony from whistleblowers. Proof of fraud. Attorney General Eric Holder told Congress, some institutions are so large that prosecuting them could endanger the economy. Too big to fail became too big to jail. Meanwhile, homeowners who fought foreclosure went to court. Some won, most lost. Michael and Katrina Berlingeri fought JP Morgan Chase for 5 years over a wrongful foreclosure. Won $18 million in damages. JP Morgan appealed, settled for $300,000. Thousands of others never made it to court, lost their homes, lost their savings, lost everything. No bailout, no second chance, no accountability. Here's the final number, $29 trillion. That's the total cost of the crisis, according to a 2012 study by the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. Lost GDP, lost jobs, lost wealth, lost opportunity. $29 trillion. That's $90,000 for every person in America. Wall Street took the profit. America took the loss. By 2015, the economy recovered. On paper, stock market at record highs. Unemployment back to 5%. GDP growing. But recovery for who? The top 1% captured 95% of income gains between 2009 and 2015. Everyone else? Still rebuilding. Homeownership rates dropped to the lowest level in 50 years. Median household wealth still below 2007 levels. Student debt hit $1.3 trillion. The crisis ended for Wall Street in 2009. For everyone else, it never ended. This is the aftermath. 13 million foreclosures. 8 million jobs lost. 16 trillion in wealth destroyed. 0 executives jailed. Bigger banks, record bonuses. The people who caused the crisis got rewarded. The people who suffered got nothing. November 25, 2008. The Federal Reserve announces a new program, quantitative easing. It's a term most Americans don't understand. The explanation is simple. The government is going to print money and give it to banks. Not a loan, not a bailout, just money, created out of nothing. Between 2008 and 2014, the Federal Reserve will print $4.5 trillion. It doesn't go to workers who lost jobs. It doesn't go to homeowners who lost houses. It goes to banks, to buy bonds, to inflate asset prices, to make the stock market rise. This is the foundation of the world we live in now. Here's how it works. The Federal Reserve creates money digitally, uses it to buy government bonds and mortgage-backed securities from banks. The banks now have cash. They're supposed to lend it to businesses and families. They don't. They buy stocks, buy real estate, buy corporate bonds, anything that pays a return. Asset prices explode. The stock market doubles, then triples. Housing prices recover, then surpass 2007 levels. If you own assets, you get rich. If you don't, you get left behind. This is why your parents' retirement recovered, and why yours never started. March 2009. The stock market hits bottom. Dow at 6,547. By 2015, it's at 18,000. By 2020, 29,000. By 2025, 42,000. The largest bull market in history, driven not by growth, not by productivity, by money printing. Companies don't use the cash to hire workers or raise wages. They buy back their own stock. Stock buybacks were illegal until 1982, considered market manipulation. After 2008, they become standard. Between 2010 and 2020, S&P 500 companies spend $5.3 trillion buying their own shares. That's $16,000 per American that went to stock prices instead of wages. Stock prices go up. CEO compensation tied to stock prices goes up. Workers' wages stay flat. If you had $10,000 in the stock market in 2009, it's worth $70,000 in 2025. If you had $10, zero in savings, it's worth $11,000. If you had no money in 2009, you have no money in 2025. The recovery was designed for people who already had wealth. By 2012, a new pattern emerges. Interest rates are zero. Savings accounts pay nothing. Bonds pay nothing. Investors desperate for returns start chasing risk. Junk bonds. Emerging markets. Cryptocurrency. Anything promising a yield. In 2009, Bitcoin is worth 8 cents. By 2021, it's worth $69,000. Not because of utility, because there's too much money chasing too few assets. The same thing happens with housing. And this is where it hits you directly. Housing prices start rising again. Not because wages are rising. Not because more people can afford homes. Because investors armed with cheap money from the Federal Reserve start buying houses. Private equity firms, hedge funds, real estate investment trusts. They buy tens of thousands of homes, pay cash, turn them into rentals. In some neighborhoods, investors buy 40% of available homes. First-time buyers can't compete. You can't outbid cash. By 2022, the home ownership rate for people under 35 is the lowest since records began. A 30-year-old in 1990 had a 65% chance of owning a home. A 30-year-old in 2025 has a 43% chance. The crisis destroyed a generation's ability to build wealth. Here's what a house cost in 2000. 3.5 times median household income. In 2025, 7 times median household income. Wages didn't double. Housing prices did. If you were 25 in 2008, you watched the affordable housing market disappear. If you were 25 in 2025, you never saw it exist. The same pattern repeats across every asset class. Stocks, bonds, real estate, art, vintage cars, anything scarce. If you owned it in 2009, you got rich. If you needed to buy it in 2025, you can't afford it. But the biggest burden isn't housing. It's education. In 2008, total student loan debt was $640 billion. By 2025, it's $1.77 trillion. More than credit card debt. More than auto loan debt, second only to mortgages. Why? Because after the crisis, jobs disappeared. College became the only option. Except college costs tripled while wages stayed flat. In 1980, a year of public university cost $1,200. Work a summer job, you could pay for it. In 2025, it costs $28,000. Work all summer, you cover 2 months. This wasn't inflation. It was extraction. So students borrow $30,000, $60,000, $100,000. They graduate into an economy that pays $40,000 for jobs that required high school diplomas in 1990. The math doesn't work. It was never meant to. A 22-year-old graduates in 2010 with $35,000 in debt. Interest rate, 6.8%. Monthly payment, $400. After 10 years of payments, they've paid $48,000. They still owe $28,000. This is by design. Student loans can't be discharged in bankruptcy. Can't be refinanced at lower rates. Follow you until death. The debt isn't just financial. It's a life sentence. Marriage delayed. Homeownership delayed. Children delayed. Retirement savings delayed. All because Wall Street needed a bailout and students got loans instead. And it gets worse. Meanwhile, corporations discover a new strategy. Borrow money at zero interest. Use it to buy competitors. Consolidate entire industries. In 2008, there were 5 major airlines. By 2015, there were 3. In 2000, there were dozens of hospital chains. By 2020, 4 companies control 40% of hospitals. Cable companies, pharmaceutical companies, grocery chains, tech platforms. Every industry consolidates. Less competition means higher prices, higher profits, lower wages. This is why everything costs more and you make the same. A plane ticket costs more. A hospital bill costs more. Prescription drugs cost more. Your salary doesn't. The pattern is everywhere. Groceries, internet, phone service, rent, fewer companies, higher prices. No alternatives. And the money flows up. Here's the number that explains everything. $50 trillion. Between 1975 and 2018, $50 trillion in wealth shifted from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. That's $400,000 per working family. Gone. Not through productivity, not through innovation, through policy. Tax cuts for the wealthy. Deregulation for corporations. Bailouts for banks. Austerity for workers. If wealth had grown equally since 1975, the median worker would make $102,000 a year instead of $50,000. The money didn't disappear. It moved. By 2020, 3 Americans own more wealth than the bottom 50% combined. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett. Not because they work 1,000,000 times harder, because the system rewards capital, not labor. A worker pays 25% in taxes. A billionaire pays 15%. Sometimes 0. The justification? Capital gains shouldn't be taxed like income. It discourages investment. But here's what actually happens. Billionaires borrow against their stock, never sell, never pay taxes, pass wealth to heirs tax-free, die with billions, pay nothing. Meanwhile, the worker pays taxes on every paycheck, pays taxes on their house, pays taxes when they die. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. The economy is booming. Unemployment at 3.5%. Stock market at record highs. GDP growing. But nearly 40% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency expense. 78% live paycheck to paycheck. Record employment, record stock market, record desperation. Because the economy recovered. Your economy didn't. Then COVID hits. March 2020, the economy shuts down. Unemployment hits 14.7% overnight. Congress passes a $2 trillion stimulus. $1,200 checks for individuals. $600 a week for unemployment. Loans for small businesses. And money runs out in months. But the Federal Reserve? They print another $3 trillion. That's $9,000 per American. You got $1,200. Banks got the rest. For banks, for corporations. For the stock market, the Dow drops to 18,000 in March. By December, it's back to 30,000. Billionaires gain $1.8 trillion during the pandemic. That's $5,400 per American extracted, while 1 million people died. Essential workers get called heroes, get paid minimum wage, die from COVID. Billionaires get richer from their yachts. The same playbook, just faster this time. By 2025, the pattern is set. Every crisis ends the same way. Print money. Give it to the wealthy. Call it recovery. The stock market becomes disconnected from reality. Companies lose money, stock goes up. Unemployment rises, stock goes up. Pandemic kills 1 million people, stock goes up. Because the market doesn't measure the economy anymore. It measures how much money the Federal Reserve prints. This is the new normal. Asset prices inflated by printed money. Wages stagnant. Debt permanent. The top 10% own 90% of stocks. The bottom 50% own 1%. The recovery happens for people who own assets. Everyone else gets inflation. And here's the problem. You can't print money forever. Eventually, something breaks. But that's not the real danger. The real danger is what happens when an entire generation realizes the game is rigged. What 2008 did to how Americans see the world, and why trust never came back. February 19, 2009, CNBC Live Television. Rick Santelli, a financial reporter, stands on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. He's angry, screaming about the government bailing out homeowners who bought too much house. He calls for a tea party to protest government spending. The traders behind him cheer. Within 48 hours, Tea Party protests erupt in 50 cities. Within 2 years, the Tea Party will reshape American politics. But here's what nobody says. The anger started in the right place. It just got aimed at the wrong target. The crisis didn't just destroy wealth. It destroyed something deeper. Trust. In 2007, 47% of Americans trusted banks. By 2012, it's 21%. In 2007, 51% trusted the government to handle the economy. By 2011, it's 19%, the lowest in recorded history. This isn't partisan. Democrats and Republicans both stop believing. And once trust breaks, everything that comes after is different. Here's what broke it. The banks caused the crisis. The government saved the banks. The people got nothing. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's the timeline. Wall Street executives kept their jobs, kept their bonuses, bought vacation homes while foreclosures hit record highs. 0 prosecutions, 0 accountability, just bailouts and lies. People watched it happen in real time, and they learned a lesson. The system protects the powerful, not you. The Tea Party rises first. 2010 Republicans ride a wave of anti-government rage to the biggest midterm victory in 70 years. 63 House seats flip. The message is clear. Cut spending, shrink government, stop the bailouts. But there's a problem. The Tea Party's anger is aimed at government spending. Not Wall Street. At food stamps. Not bank bonuses. At homeowners who defaulted. Not the banks that defrauded them. The movement is real. The target is wrong. And Wall Street? They fund the Tea Party candidates who want to cut financial regulation. The anger gets redirected. Away from the banks, toward the government that saved them. Then the left wakes up. September 17, 2011. Occupy Wall Street begins in Zuccotti Park, New York City. The message is sharper. We are the 99%. The target is correct. Wall Street, inequality, corporate power. Within weeks, Occupy spreads to 600 cities worldwide. Millions of people marching, camping in parks, demanding accountability. For the first time since the crisis, the conversation shifts. Not about deficits, about inequality. Not about government spending, about who the government works for. Occupy doesn't win policy changes. It doesn't have demands. It doesn't have leaders, but it wins the culture war. After Occupy, talking about inequality becomes normal. Both movements, Tea Party and Occupy, come from the same wound. The system is rigged. The Tea Party blames government. Occupy blames Wall Street. Both are right. Neither wins. But the lesson sinks in. The rules don't apply equally. And this realization changes everything. By 2012, something shifts in American politics. For decades, both parties agreed on the basics: free trade, deregulation, Wall Street-friendly policies. Bill Clinton repealed Glass-Steagall. George W. Bush bailed out the banks. Obama appointed Wall Street executives to run the economy. The parties disagreed on social issues. On economics, they were aligned. After 2008, that alignment shatters. This is where the anger mutates into politics. 2016, two candidates surge. Bernie Sanders, Democratic Socialist. Campaigns against Wall Street. Refuses corporate donations. Fills stadiums. Donald Trump, Republican populist. Campaigns against elites. Calls the system rigged. Wins the presidency. Opposite parties. Opposite policies. Same diagnosis. The economy is rigged against you. Sanders voters and Trump voters don't agree on solutions, but they agree on the problem. And that agreement didn't exist before 2008. Here's the pattern. Before 2008, populism was fringe. After 2008, it's mainstream. Before 2008, criticizing Wall Street was radical. After 2008, it's required. Before 2008, both parties protected banks. After 2008, both parties at least rhetorically attacked them. The crisis didn't just change policy. It changed what you're allowed to say. But words aren't policy. Trump wins in 2016 calling Wall Street corrupt, then appoints Goldman Sachs executives to his cabinet. 6 of them. Treasury Secretary, Economic Advisor, SEC Chairman, all from Wall Street. The same Wall Street he campaigned against. The populism was real. The betrayal was faster. And people noticed. By 2020, trust hits new lows. Only 17% of Americans trust the government. Only 7% trust Congress. Only 18% trust banks. But here's the part that matters. Only 29% trust each other. The crisis didn't just break trust in institutions. It broke trust in the idea that we're in this together. If the government rescues banks and not people, we're not in this together. If your 401k recovered but your neighbor lost their house, we're not in this together. If billionaires got richer during a pandemic while you lost your job, we're not in this together. The social contract didn't fray. It snapped. And this is where it gets dangerous. When people don't trust institutions, they don't believe facts. Experts said the bailout was necessary. It destroyed millions of lives. Economists said austerity would help. It made inequality worse. The Federal Reserve said quantitative easing would help everyone. It helped asset owners. Every promise was broken. Every prediction was wrong for regular people. So when the next crisis comes, COVID, millions of people don't believe the experts. Don't trust the vaccine. Don't trust the lockdowns. Don't trust the scientists. Not because they're stupid. Because the last time they trusted experts, they lost everything. This isn't irrational. It's learned behavior. The conspiracy theories multiply. QAnon, election denial, anti-vax movements, they seem crazy. Until you realize they're answers to a real question. Why is the system broken? The real answer is policy choices, deregulation, bailouts, tax cuts for the wealthy. But that answer requires trusting that institutions can be reformed. If you don't trust institutions, you need a different answer. A hidden cabal, a deep state, a conspiracy. It's wrong, but it makes emotional sense. If the system is rigged, someone rigged it on purpose. By 2025, American politics is unrecognizable. The center collapses. Moderates lose primaries. Compromise becomes betrayal. The left wants to tax billionaires. The right wants to burn it all down. Nobody trusts anyone. This didn't come from social media. This didn't come from Russia. This came from 2008, the year the government chose banks over people. And everyone saw it happen. Here's the human cost of broken trust. You don't buy a house because you don't believe the market is fair. You don't invest because you think it's rigged. You don't save because you watch savings accounts earn nothing for 15 years while stocks tripled. You don't believe politicians because they all took Wall Street money. You don't trust your neighbor because they got bailed out and you didn't. You stop participating, stop believing, stop hoping. And when an entire generation stops believing the system can work, the system stops working. This is the psychology shift. Before 2008, most Americans believed the system was fair. Flawed, but fair. After 2008, most Americans believe the system is rigged, and they're right. Before 2008, inequality was a policy problem. After 2008, it's a moral crisis. Before 2008, people disagreed about solutions. After 2008, people disagree about reality. The crisis didn't just break the economy. It broke the shared story we told about who we are. And the story we tell now? The rich get richer. The rest get nothing. The system protects power. That story might be dark, but after 2008, it's the only story that fits the facts. In the final chapter, we're going to look at the crisis being built right now. The same players, the same strategies, the same refusal to learn. Because the biggest lesson of 2008 isn't what broke. It's that we never fixed it. March 2023, Silicon Valley Bank collapses in 36 hours. The 16th largest bank in America, gone. Signature Bank collapses 2 days later. First Republic collapses 6 weeks after that. 3 banks, 60 days, $200 billion in assets, vanished. The Federal Reserve steps in, guarantees all deposits, bails out the banks. Again, this isn't a new crisis. This is the same crisis, and it's being built faster this time. Here's what happened. Silicon Valley Bank invested deposits in long-term bonds. Safe, stable, boring. Until interest rates rose, bond values collapsed. The bank didn't have enough cash to cover withdrawals. A bank run started on Twitter. Venture capitalists told startups to pull their money. Within 36 hours, $42 billion fled. The bank collapsed faster than Lehman Brothers. Not because of fraud, not because of risky bets, because the Federal Reserve raised interest rates after keeping them at zero for 15 years. The system became addicted to free money. When the money stopped, it seized up. Just like 2008. But here's the difference. In 2008, the government pretended the bailouts would be temporary. In 2023, they don't even pretend. The Federal Reserve guarantees all deposits at Silicon Valley Bank, not just the insured $250,000. All of it. Billionaires get bailed out instantly, no debate. Meanwhile, student loan forgiveness, $10,000 per borrower, gets blocked by the courts. The message is clear. Losses get socialized. Profits stay private. And everyone sees it now. The bailouts don't stop in 2023. Between 2008 and 2025, the Federal Reserve creates $9 trillion. That's $27,000 per American. Created from nothing, given to banks and corporations. You didn't get a check for $27,000, but you got the inflation. By 2021, inflation starts rising. At first, the Federal Reserve says it's temporary. By 2022, inflation hits 9%, the highest in 40 years. Gas prices double. Grocery bills spike. Rent jumps 20% in some cities. The explanation? Supply chains, COVID, Ukraine. All true. All incomplete. The real reason? You can't print $9 trillion without consequences. The money went to assets, stocks, real estate, bonds, but inflation hits everyone. If you owned assets, you got richer even with inflation. If you didn't, you just got poorer. Here's the human cost. A gallon of milk cost $3 in 2019. It costs $5 in 2023. Your salary didn't go up 67%. A one-bedroom apartment cost $1,200 in 2015. It costs $2,000 in 2025. Your salary didn't go up 67%. A used car cost $15,000 in 2019. It costs $28,000 in 2023. Your salary went up 3% per year. If you were lucky, this is theft, disguised as monetary policy. The Federal Reserve's solution to inflation? Raise interest rates from 0% to 5.5% in 18 months. The fastest increase in history. Higher rates mean higher mortgage payments, higher car payments, higher credit card bills. Millions of people who locked in low rates are fine. Everyone else drowns. If you bought a house in 2020, your mortgage rate is 3%. If you're buying in 2025, it's 7%. Same house. Double the monthly payment. Another generation locked out. But higher rates do something else. They pop bubbles. By 2025, the cracks are showing everywhere. Commercial real estate is collapsing. Office buildings worth $500 million in 2019 sell for $100 million in 2025. Nobody wants office space. Everyone works remote. Banks that loaned money for those buildings? Holding worthless assets. Regional banks start failing. Just like 2008. The same assets, the same leverage, the same refusal to admit the losses. Meanwhile, private equity is imploding. For 15 years, private equity firms borrowed at 0%, bought companies, loaded them with debt, extracted profits. Now interest rates are 5.5%. The debt is crushing. Red Lobster filed for bankruptcy in 2024, owned by private equity. Party City files for bankruptcy, owned by private equity. Bed Bath & Beyond, Toys R Us, dozens of retailers, all gutted by the same playbook. Borrow cheap, extract cash, leave the corpse. But when rates rise, the playbook breaks, and the workers pay the price. Again, here's the pattern. Low rates inflate bubbles. High rates pop them. The people at the top make money on both sides. The people at the bottom lose on both sides. In 2008, they inflated housing. In 2020, they inflated everything. In 2025, it's all coming down. But the biggest bubble isn't real estate. It's corporate debt. U.S. corporate debt in 2008, $5 trillion. U.S. corporate debt in $202,514 trillion. Companies borrowed trillions at 0%, bought back stock, paid dividends, funded mergers. Not $1 went to productive investment. Now rates are higher. Debt payments are soaring. Defaults are coming. And when they do, the banks holding that debt will need another bailout. The cycle is already written. The Federal Reserve knows this. They raise rates to fight inflation. But if they raise too much, the economy collapses. If they lower rates, inflation comes back. They're trapped between destroying the economy and destroying the currency. This isn't a policy debate. It's a hostage situation. And the hostage is you. Here's what nobody says out loud. The system is unsustainable. You can't print unlimited money without destroying the currency. You can't bail out every bank without creating moral hazard. You can't suppress interest rates for 15 years without creating bubbles. You can't have infinite asset inflation without infinite inequality. The math doesn't work. Everyone knows it. Nobody will stop it, because stopping it would mean pain. For everyone, immediately. So they keep printing, keep bailing out, keep kicking the can, until they can't. The next crisis won't look like 2008. It'll be faster, bigger, harder to contain because the tools are exhausted. In 2008, the Federal Reserve cut rates from 5% to 0. In the next crisis, rates are already near 0. There's no room to cut. In 2008, the Fed printed $4 trillion. In 2020, they printed $5 trillion more. In the next crisis, they'll print more, but the currency can't take it forever. At some point, the dollar breaks, and then everything breaks. This isn't fear-mongering. This is math. Total used debt in 2008, $10 trillion. Total U.S. debt in $202,536 trillion. That's $107,000 per person. The interest payment alone is $1 trillion per year, more than the defense budget. At some point, the debt becomes unpayable. Not in a dramatic collapse, just a slow erosion. The dollar buys less. Savings lose value. The middle class disappears. It's already happening. Here's what 2008 taught the powerful. Take the risk. The government will cover the loss. Inflate the bubble. Cash out before it pops. Socialize the damage. Privatize the profit. It worked in 2008. It worked in 2020. It worked in 2023. Why would they stop? They won't. Not until the system breaks completely. But here's what 2008 taught everyone else. The system doesn't work for you. Your labor is expendable. Your savings are worthless. Your future is sold. The rich get bailouts. You get debt. The powerful get rescued. You get left behind. That lesson sank in. And once people learn the system is rigged, they stop playing by the rules. They stop trusting institutions. Stop believing in fairness. Stop hoping for change. They either give up or burn it down. Both are happening now. 18 years after 2008, here's what changed. Banks are bigger. Inequality is worse. Debt is higher. Trust is gone. The economy recovered, meaning asset prices recovered. Your life didn't recover. It recalibrated to lower expectations, smaller dreams, permanent precarity. This is the world 2008 built, and the next crisis will be worse. Not because we didn't see it coming, because we did, and we built it anyway. The promise of 2008 was, this will never happen again. Dodd-Frank would prevent it. Regulations would contain it. Lessons were learned. None of it was true. The banks are bigger. The risks are higher. The protections are weaker. The next crisis is already being built. Same players, same strategies, same refusal to change. Because the system worked exactly as designed. It transferred trillions from the poor to the rich. It convinced you the economy recovered. It made you believe this is normal. This is the echo. 2008 didn't end. It just went quiet for a while. The same forces that broke the economy are still in control. The same policies that created the crisis are still in place. The same people who caused the collapse are still in power. And when the next crash comes, and it will come, they'll do the same thing. Print money, bail out banks, let you drown. The only question is, what do you do when you know the system is rigged? Do you keep playing, hoping this time will be different? Do you give up, accept that this is just how it works? Or do you demand something different? The answer will define the next decade. Because 2008 didn't just break the economy. It broke the story we told about who we are and what we value. And until we write a new story, we're trapped in this one. 18 years later, the verdict is clear. Wall Street won, and they're winning again. The question isn't whether another crisis is coming. The question is whether we'll do anything different when it does.